welcome everybody to TYT Community, the Social Justice Hour. Whoops. Hold on. Okay, welcome everybody to TYT Community, the Social Justice Hour here on the TYT Network. Yes, we are a bunch of amateurs, but don't worry, we've got a lot of great stories for you. Remember, TYT Community is the only show on the TYT Network, paneled by fans and members of Young Turks. If you want to be on the show, let me know. JeffW@TYTNetwork.com, or go to our Facebook page. Send us a message if you're interested in being in the show, and we'll have you as a panelist. Speaking of panelists, today I am joined by one Stephen J. Buckley and Nick, I can't pronounce your last name. Welcome to the show.
Good to be on.
I just don't want to butcher it, man.
Well, technically I'm
okay.
Stephen J.C. Buckley as well, so...
Stephen is Buckley's. Tastes awful, but it works.
Tastes great, less filling? I didn't say that. What? What are you talking about? I don't know. Anyway, we've got a great show planned for you today. New details in the Michael Brown case. In the shooting, we'll get to that. Another case of a police shooting that's not being covered. Interesting. We're going to have a little bit of a court, TYT Community local court on Facebook. Are they guilty or not guilty of giving money to a horrible candidate? We'll discuss. Republicans for green energy. What is this? We're going to get into it. And Jimmy John's also got a great story on Jimmy John's, how they're screwing over their workers. Surprise, surprise. We'll get into that later on in the show. But let's start out with our first story, Michael Brown, new details. Oh, no. It's just one of those days where tech fails are just rampant today. All right. More information about the shooting in Ferguson that left 18-year-old Michael Brown dead and a community up in arms. Now, there are two pieces of information just recently released today by the Ferguson police. One is the name of the officer that pulled the trigger. Now, his name is Officer Darren Wilson. Very important. Now, he's been part of the force for about 6 or so years, and according to Chief Thomas Jackson, he had a clean record. Interesting thing about that, apparently they don't keep records on individual police officers, so how can you really tell if he's got a clean record or not? You really can't. So, already, that's suspect. Now, the second piece of information, what we're going to really talk about is basically about Michael Brown. Now, according to police, he was a leading suspect, a strong arm robbery, which is an unarmed robbery. Now, there's some surveillance video. CNN got a hold of it. We're going to show that here in a second, so check out this video from CNN.
In Ferguson, Missouri, at the QT that was burned out, the site of where those protests have been happening. Most of them, since as of a couple of days ago, have been peaceful. Of course, there were some very raucous protests earlier. This is a video that you're looking at now, the surveillance video from inside of the convenience store, and this is supposedly, and I'm just getting this information as it comes in, Dorian Johnson, who was with Michael Brown when he was shot by Officer Darren Wilson, will not face any criminal charges. Hang on, I'm going to get to that in 1 second. I'm just getting that information from my producers. But the video that you're looking at now is a video that was released from Tom Jackson just a short time ago that happened inside the convenience store, where they're saying that Michael Brown supposedly stole some cigars, some Swisher Sweet cigars, and then had an altercation with the store clerk. At first they released some still pictures, and now the video that you should be looking at on your screen right now. And from this video...
All right, so there's the video, right? And also, news came out recently that Dorian Johnson, Michael Brown's friend, also admits that, yes, that was him. They robbed the convenience store. Now, that doesn't really, at this point, it really doesn't matter, okay? The whole question here is, what about the connection between them? Well, there is no connection, as far as we know. And the police had even said that there is no connection. So why bring it up? Why bring that up? Guys, what do you think?
Well, first of all, the thing I want to just, it's a real side note, but I hate it whenever you see CNN and other networks when the reporters on the ground are being fed information from their producers exactly as it's happening. Wait until you have the details definitely confirmed, and then tell your reporters. Don't give them a constant feed telling them, oh, now you need to say this, now you need to say this. It just looks awful, and that's how you get speculation, and that's how you get bad reporting and bad journalism. But in terms of the actual connection, you know, you're right, the caption said it there is absolutely no connection between this robbery and the kind of Mike Brown being shot. Even if he did rob the convenience store, you can see there wasn't, you know, it wasn't an armed robbery or anything. You know, maybe you could say, or maybe he did have a gun on him and he just didn't decide to wield it. The fact was, the cop shot a teenage boy with his hands up in the air, obviously with no threat to anyone's life. It's just, you always get the sense that why has this only come to light, you know, almost a week after the teen's murder? You get the sense that it's almost a kind of a character assassination, and a lot of kind of the friends and family are beginning to say that. Like, friends and family have also been saying, oh, this video, it's not Mike Brown, it could have been photoshopped or doctored. He's wearing a different t-shirt in that video to what he was actually kind of found in when he was killed. I mean, the fact that his friend has said, okay, we did rob that store, that kind of disproves any of those sort of theories that the cops have kind of photoshopped or edited this in any way. But it's got nothing to do with it. And the fact it's just been brought out now, it just leads me to believe that the cops are trying to, well, not necessarily the cops, but someone out there is trying to demonize Mike Brown and almost try and find some sort of justification for the killing of this unarmed teenage boy.
Yeah, that's basically what it sounds like. It sounds like they're trying to find a justification for it. God knows if they found out that he'd actually killed someone, they would have definitely brought that up. But it still doesn't change the fact that this kid was still gunned down, and it was for reasons completely unrelated to all of that. So it doesn't make it okay. It's a very weak attempt, and anyone who actually does care about the story and is following closely will notice that. And I throw those two caveats in, one for the people who are following closely but are totally on the side of the cops and think this kid was just a thug. Those people don't care. And two, the people who just aren't following the story at all. So.
Right. And there's the thing, like, it hasn't changed what happened. It hasn't changed the fact that when he was arrested, he wasn't doing anything wrong. And like the cop that shot him had no idea he was even involved in that thing. And that's the important thing. It's not as if you can say, well, he knew that he was a suspect, so he went to go and question him. No. He pulls up and says, "Get the fuck off the street. Get the fuck on the sidewalk." And then it escalated from there. There was no connection, and that's really, really important.
Yeah, and the chief himself. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, to get to your thug point too. Like, a lot of people will start to draw the. Well, unfortunately, they're going to start to draw a connection and say, "Oh, look, he's a thug." Conservatives will even say that, especially. He's a thug. Look at that. He robbed the convenience store. He deserves what he got. Well, that's.
And I mean, here's the thing too. The chief said himself said it's because he was in the middle of the street, just blocking traffic. That's why he's approached. But that's a very weak reason anyway. But here's the other thing too. This isn't grand larceny. This isn't Grand Theft Auto. This isn't. And I don't mean the video game. This isn't the crime, Grand Theft Auto. This isn't theft over $1,000. This was petty theft. This was one of the most minor of minor offenses. So even though this came out now and shows, okay, he broke the law, it's one of the most minor offenses out there. So it's it's not even any justification on the face of it, but even morally it's not even any justification in the slightest too, because it's not a terrible crime. It's the most minor offense out there.
It's a box of Swisher Sweets that basically cost less than $50. So when did we make cigar theft a capital crime, right?
Well, I mean, the thing is as well is that in the article, I think it was Washington Post report, he said, it was about 10:30 Eastern Standard Time today, the press were giving out kind of information regarding kind of this video was released and so on and so forth. But the information that was given out to the press only had information about the alleged robbery, no information about the interaction with Officer Wilson, and nothing about the actual shooting itself. And the only information that was in the documents given to the press were that at 12:01 a.m. Officer Wilson encounters Brown. 12:04, second police officer arrives and Brown is dead. So that's the only information that the press have actually been definitely confirmed. That's the extra information that came out today, apart from this video that's now been leaked. And it's almost a sense that it's just, as we said, it's muddying the waters. It's just trying to kind of somehow do damage. Like, this kid wasn't perfect. He could have been a thug. You alluded to kind of conservative commentators already calling him a thug. Anthony Cumia just tweeted a couple of minutes ago before we went live, he was a thug. Why didn't his friends tell the press when he was interviewed, we just kind of looted a store before we were arrested, or the cop interacted with us. It doesn't make a difference. An unarmed teenage boy was shot in almost cold blood, really, and it almost seems that this is trying to be covered up a bit.
Right, and at the end of the day, you're right. It doesn't matter, because no matter what he did, he was executed. He was shot. There was actually somebody who was there who live tweeted the whole thing. They found one of the news sites found his Twitter feed, and this guy, he's like, "Oh my God! Like, I think I just saw someone get shot." And some of what he said as an eyewitness, he said that he counted 7 shots. He was shot twice in the back, and 5 times after he turned around and put his hands up. And this cop was armed with an AR-15 rifle. It's not as if he was pulled out his service weapon, his pistol or anything like that. No, he had enough time to go and get his AR-15 and then shoot 5 times as he was trying to surrender. This is execution. This is murder.
I mean, one could also almost find some sort of justification if he pulled out his AR-15, the kid was running away, he somehow thought that the kid might have been armed and kind of shot him once in the back, and then the kid stopped, and it just happened that one bullet happened to kill him. Bad, awful, should still be investigation. Cop, something should happen there. But the fact he was shot, as you said, twice in the back, and then 5 times in the front when he held up his hands, and there seems to be a number of witnesses now kind of proving that was the case. It was an execution for absolutely no reason. An unarmed kind of teenage boy was killed. This is just atrocious.
It really makes me think of a couple months ago there was a story about a young teen in a trailer park who was going to join the army, and he was living with his parents at the moment. And then an officer knocked on the door to the trailer park, to their trailer, and he opened the door, and the officer shot him because she thought he had a weapon. And the only reason I mention this is because it goes to a point I think Cenk was mentioning in that segment months ago about it, was that there's this culture circulating around. Not I would contest Jimmy Dore's belief that it's all in the police. I would say there's this. I buy this argument better, that Cenk said there was this culture pervading around not just the police force but a lot of the media too, that things are very dangerous now, and there's all sorts of violence and people drawing guns on things and attacking people, that it's making cops jumpy, really, really jumpy, because they don't know what to do and they're acting rather than thinking. And I think there's something to that. Obviously, it's not all of it, especially in the Ferguson case. This guy seemed like he did think before he acted, and he thought, I'm going to go after this kid because I don't like him.
All right, so like I said, the bottom line, and to close out this segment, I love this tweet by David Korn of Mother Jealous. Now he tweeted out, and I think this is 100% right. Bottom line is, cops are supposed to use deadly force only when lives are at risk. You don't shoot robbery suspects. And that goes to the core of the matter, is that in America, we're supposed to have due process. You can't let a cop be judge, jury, and executioner in these sorts of situations. If you're trying to surrender, you don't shoot someone in the face. And that's where our policing is going wrong here in America these days. All right. Now we have another disastrous story as well, related to the police. We're moving out of Ferguson and going to Utah. It's a theme lately. With a lot of the focus on the unjustifiable shooting of Michael Brown, we have a story that illustrates how it's not just communities of color that are being affected by police overreaction. For this, we go to a case of 20-year-old Dylan Taylor. Now, officers in Salt Lake City, Utah, were called to a 7-Eleven store after they received reports of a man waving around a gun. And here we go. Now, officers showed up and found that Taylor matched the description of the suspect. Now, he was ordered to show his hands. He didn't, and he ended up getting shot and was pronounced dead at the scene. Now, the police say that Taylor ignored their demands to show his hands and was, quote, visibly upset. Now, however, his brother, who was there at the shooting, had a different account. Now, he said, quote, he couldn't hear them, so he just kept walking. Then they had guns pointed at his face. That's when he turned off his music. He was wearing headphones at the time. I saw them point guns in my brother's face, and I knew what was going to happen. Now, one officer reportedly told Dylan Taylor to get on the ground, but another told him to place his hands on top of his head. So what do, right? You get confused. That's exactly what his brother was saying. He got confused. He went to pull up his pants to get on the ground, and they shot him. Well, what about the gun, right? Well, they said there was a man waving around a gun, so where was it, right? Taylor was supposed to have a gun, but the police so far haven't said whether or not he was armed. Even if he was, the police weren't they were not in imminent danger. So what do you guys think about this so far?
Well, for me, the fact that the cops were saying he was visibly upset. From the way that the scenario has been described, it seems that the teen was walking away from the cops. You know, he had his music in, he obviously couldn't hear them. But if they couldn't see his face, I don't see how one walks in a physically upset manner. And then, in the whole, obviously, it looked as if he's going to go pull up his trousers, or pants, as you call it in America, pull up his trousers, it looked like he could have been reaching potentially for a gun. As a trained cop, like, unless they may have suspected he had a gun, he had a warrant out for his arrest at the time, but if you see a flash of kind of metal or something coming out, or what looks like it could be a gun, then you can draw your weapon on him and aim. It doesn't mean you fire instantly, but the fact he was just going, one assumes that he wasn't making an aggressive motion to pull up his trousers or anything. Don't know how one aggressively pulls up your trousers. They just shot him cold. It just seems, again, it's almost like the Mike Brown case, that they just want to shoot first and ask questions later. You know, they just think this is how we're going to serve out our justice. It's like RoboCop or The Punisher. It's ridiculous.
Nick?
Yeah, Stephen pretty much hit the nail on the head there. I mean, they're not supposed to be so jumpy and just go for these kinds of things. I don't know what they're thinking or what kind of training they're getting. Like, it makes me think of a skit from Key and Peele where a cop draws a gun on a guy who's actually committed a crime, but he doesn't shoot, so the guy just eventually gets in the car and drives away. Do they show that in cop training and say, this will be what happens if you don't shoot right away? Like, why on earth are these guys just... It's crazy. It's crazy stuff.
I mean,
and
here's the interesting thing.
Here's the interesting thing too, and why I'm partially surprised, but not too surprised that this isn't coming up. The victim is white. You'd think Fox would be jumping all over this, but then again, we have the Ferguson thing going on. Can't have that clear contradiction at the same time. We just can't talk about this one.
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels to this case.
There's so many. It's almost that, well, I mean, the thing is, in this case, there was 3 grown-up adult male officers who had obviously, from the sound of things, had surrounded this kid. Like, there's no way this kid was going to be escaping. He might have been able to run away and maybe run a couple of meters before they would have tackled him. But if he goes to grab for his gun, you tackle him, you tase him. If they didn't have tasers on him, you just grab him. You're physically surrounding him, or you're close enough to be able to knock his hand away or do something. Like, you're a cop in the line of duty. You may get shot. That's part of your job, but you don't go around shooting suspects. It's just like, this sort of thing doesn't really happen anywhere else in the Western world. You just see case after case of it happening in America, and it's because everyone's nervous that everyone else is carrying a gun. And I don't blame the cops for being nervous that everyone's carrying a gun, because that's the culture that now everyone has in America.
You mentioned the warrant. This is what was called an open warrant. So this police officer wasn't necessarily looking for this kid, right? On whatever he had an open warrant for. But he was responding to a call of somebody waving a gun around, and he fit the description, which I'm not sure what description it was. But you would think the police would actually say, yeah, he was armed. Like, that's something that you could find out in a cursory search. Yeah, oh yeah, he had a gun on him, so it was justified. Even though it's not really justified, because he still had he didn't have the gun out, he wasn't shooting the officer, he was doing what he was supposed to do, pulling up his pants and to go and follow the directions of the officer. So you guys also mentioned that this is a lot like the Michael Brown case. Yeah, definitely a lot of parallels. In both cases, there is some criminal activity. In the case of Dylan Taylor, he had actually served time before and was convicted of a crime. And like I said, he had an open warrant, but neither one of these things and neither one of these people did anything to deserve being executed on the spot. And that's the whole problem. But I do actually want to go into, since we decided to go into the criminal angle of it, right? Let's talk about Taylor's criminal past. Guess what he had done? In 2012, he pleaded guilty to robbery. He stole a tip jar from a restaurant and a 30-pack of beer. So he got arrested, served his time, threatened some people who might have told on him. So he's obviously not a great guy. But once again, you got to point out, just like the Michael Brown case, neither of these people did anything worthy of execution. And that's essentially what it was, an execution.
And keep in mind, too, this kid was engaged. He was going to get married, and he had a child on the way. I mean, it's some sort, it could have been, I don't know, they could be getting married because of the kid or something, I don't know. You could argue all sorts of negative things that it doesn't change the fact he's a bad guy, but I can't get it out of my head that if someone's engaged and has a kid on the way, there's a good chance they're not the same person they were when they robbed a place back in 2012. That's a good chance that they might have changed too. So not that that's even really too much of a factor in this situation, because he still shouldn't have been killed. But I don't even buy the argument that he was a bad egg kind of crap. I think that's nonsense. I mean,
that's all completely irrelevant. I mean, I disagree that having a kid would have changed him anyway. But I know that when they have an investigation, what they will bring up is that on his Facebook page, he wrote, "I feel my time is coming soon. My nightmares are telling me I'm gonna have warrants out for my arrest soon. All my family has turned and snitched on me. I'll die before I go do a lot of time in a cell. I feel like God can't even save me now on this one. This time coming, it's me and the demons I'm fighting." So somehow the cops maybe say, well, look, he was looking to die. He was looking for a fight. He wanted to get into a gunfight. The fact is, they didn't know what he'd written on Facebook at the time. They shot him. As far as they were concerned, he he was innocent. He was innocent until proven guilty, and they basically shot, in their mind, an innocent man. They didn't know he was guilty. They might not have even known there was a warrant out for arrest. He just fitted the description of someone who might have committed a crime earlier that day. In their minds, they must have realized they just shot an innocent man in cold blood. It's ridiculous.
And even then, even if they knew all that stuff, he was moving to comply with the officers, and based on the physical descriptions, everything he did when he was within moments before he died was completely not in keeping with the stuff he was posting on Facebook. He was complying with the officers. He was getting on the ground. He was not being aggressive or seeking an end to things or anything like that. So it's the stuff he was saying on his Facebook did not bear out in his actual character when the instant shot arose, but they still killed him. So.
And that's the whole problem. It's not that we're pointing these things out to defend criminals when they do something wrong, right? The thing is that here in America, and I know you guys aren't from America, but here in America we have a constitution, and we have something called due process, which means that even if you are guilty of a crime, that doesn't mean that you deserve an execution. And I know I keep saying the exact same thing, but some people can't get it through their heads. We have this thing called due process in our Constitution, which means that you are not guilty and proven innocent, right? You are innocent until proven guilty. But these cops, once again, time after time after time, you have these instances of police shooting first and asking questions later. And that is the main problem, and that is why it's so important to bring up. Because we have this thing in America where police are militarized to the point of, tanks and everything like that. And they also are trained to shoot first and ask questions later. And that is definitely not something you want to have for your law enforcement.
And let's not forget, people are mentioning it in the comments, and I think even Wolf Blitzer, God bless his boring soul, he brought it up on CNN. Why are these cops shooting to kill instantly? Shoot to maim, shoot to kind of cripple him or something like that. Shoot him in the leg, shoot him in the arm. Don't go straight for a chest shot or a head shot. I mean, it's not actually been reported where he was directly shot in this case, but, kind of incapacitate him in some way. Don't kill him instantly. It seems like the cops across the country are being told, just shoot to kill, and that is not a good policy to have.
Yeah,
sorry, I just want to make this.
Those taser crazy cops that are like tasing everybody. There's never a taser cop where you need one, because I think this might have been a good opportunity, at least for that. I mean, I would rather have somebody get tased than shot to death.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that there's an interesting little image I saw, like a side-to-side comparison. One was Michael Brown, and one was an incident in Germany where a man was drunk and carrying around a sword of some kind or something. And he was approaching a cop, and the cop, rather than killing this guy, shot him in the leg and arrested him. Like, it's not hard. You can do that. That's not a challenging thing to do as law enforcement. And it wouldn't have been challenging to do for Michael Brown. Especially when considering the fact that he was really killed by the several shots fired at him when he was 35 feet away and had his hands in the air. That was when he was killed. Not during the scuffle, not when he was trying to run, when he stopped running. When he was no longer a threat.
And the thing is as well that if Mike Brown, or even this case, let's say if they did have a gun, and let's say if they were real nasty characters who were looking to kind of to go out and kill a cop or something, you shoot them in the leg and you incapacitate them. Then if they start pulling out a gun, and you'd be able to obviously see if they're pulling out a gun, then you can shoot to kill. That's fine. People won't have a kind of an argument against that. They would have had a gun on their body, kind of DNA would have been there, fine. If it turns out they don't have the gun, and you shot them in the leg, and they were innocent after all, or, whatever, then worst case scenario is, the police force is going to have to pay for their medical bills or something. But at least you wouldn't have killed an innocent teenage boy. It's ridiculous.
Right. Look, like I said, it's not like this guy is completely 100% innocent. Neither of these guys are angels, right? But regardless of that, they have rights. They had rights, and their rights were not respected by the police because the police played judge, jury, and executioner, and that's what's wrong. It's depressing. Want to move on to Facebook?
Yeah, just before we move on, you can probably edit this bit out, but when will be, like, how long before kind of a white teenage girl is going to be kind of murdered by the cops? But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think a cop will shoot kind of an innocent-looking white girl in the face kind of 12 times or 8 times, or however many times it is. I just
No,
don't
they just like to rape those instead, apparently, and that they get away with that apparently.
You know, this brings me up to an article Eric Erickson, of all people, wrote. Yeah, I know, editor of Red State, right? He wrote something like, let me remember the title of it. Does a white person have to be killed before we demilitarize the police? That wasn't the title of it, but that was essentially what he was writing for. And he's like, us on the conservative side have been talking about demilitarizing the police for a long time. I kind of call bullshit on that, but whatever, right? I'll agree with him in principle. Yes, we do need to demilitarize the police. But basically what he was saying is like, and we were talking about this last night, when are people going to start paying attention? When is the mainstream, when is regular people going to pay attention? Does it have to be when a white person gets killed like this? Well, Eric, there's your white person. There it is. When is everyone going to wake up to police militarization? Like, this is a perfect example. I'm expecting you, Eric Erickson, to come out and do this story.
But here's the thing. This is why they won't do it, because the Ferguson story is going on. They can't make such a clear contradiction at the exact same time. So this one's going to be brushed under the rug. And next time when a white guy's shot, they'll go on about it. But they won't care about the black guy.
They're not, for want of best phrase, they're not smart enough in the media to be able to cope with these two different kind of like converging narratives that they'd have. And I'll tell you when it will change. You know, the kind of the Mike Brown situation, that will all die down. You know, this story in Utah, that will die down. When a 15-year-old kind of white blonde, you know, she's a cheerleader in high school or whatever, when she gets shot by a cop who's over-aggressive, that's when people will start really paying attention. It won't be until then. It always has to be an innocent kind of blonde, white-haired kind of girl. That's when people will start caring.
I hope it doesn't happen. I mean,
yeah,
I hope people start caring without that having to happen. You know? Like, you would think that both of these cases would be enough. At least, look, I know it's me being, like, wishful thinking, right?
You damn bleeding heart liberal, you. Who do you think you are? Caring about people? God.
I know. How dare I care about people? How dare I? All right. Less depressing stuff. More Facebook. All right. So the political lobbying arm of Facebook recently. That seems sort of odd to say. Political lobbying arm of Facebook. Anyway, they recently made a $10,000 donation to a Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes re-election campaign. Okay, so already nothing really odd that stands out about here. Oh, it's a corporation. Corporations donate money to candidates all the time, right? Well, except that Reyes is fighting to bring back Utah's ban on same-sex marriage. Now, wait a minute. I thought that Facebook was an LGBT company, or at least LGBT friendly, and standing up for personal rights. They make a big deal about that, about look at how gay friendly we are. We love the gays. They're great. Well, what gives? Well, according to the website Q Salt Lake, they reached out to Facebook and they had this to say. Facebook has a strong record on LGBT issues, and that will not change, but we make decisions about which candidates to support based on an entire portfolio of issues important to our business, not just one. A contribution to a candidate does not mean that we agree with every policy position that the candidate takes. Whatever. This is pretty much corporate speak to say that, yeah, well, we don't really like his anti-gay stance, but we're going to give him money anyway to get him reelected. And the most important part of that statement is that they are committed to fostering innovation and an open internet. So, in the interest of fairness, Facebook has also donated to pro-LGBT candidates, and apparently the big issue here is Sean Reyes is for net neutrality. So here's the question. Do you guys think it's fair to condemn Facebook for supporting this guy?
No. I don't think it's fair to condemn Facebook for this. It'd be nice if the comments would deal with the story we're on instead of dealing with the rants of a neo-fascist, but I digress. No, it's not fair for us to criticize Facebook for this. The simple fact is they're a business. Their primary motive and their primary concern will be net neutrality. It makes all the sense in the world that they're going to support candidates who support net neutrality, regardless of what other issues they support too. And keep in mind, the way things are going in the States, this is an issue that seems to be slowly settled, in the sense that it's slow. Pro-gay marriage is slowly winning more and more ground, and it's all going to roll domino eventually. I'm betting if Facebook had to rationalize it any deeper, they would eventually go and say that it's not, in the long term, this guy won't make a strong difference for the issue of same-sex marriage, but he might make a strong case for net neutrality, because this is the way it works. It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't know, and the devil we know are the homophobic bigots. The devil we don't know is a world where net neutrality is gone completely, and that's, I think, why Facebook did this, because they fear the world with no net neutrality far more than the current one that is already moving towards having gay marriage legal across the board. So,
yeah, I mean, I agree with that. In that Facebook, they probably would have liked if Sean Reyes was in favor of gay marriage, but they're an internet-based company. They care more about net neutrality than they do about gay marriage. If they were a kind of a wedding planning company, then maybe they wouldn't give them the money because they want more marriages to happen, so therefore they'd be in favor of gay marriage. I don't think Facebook kind of can be condemned for this. As they pointed out, we've given money to kind of all different types of people who have been in favor of gay marriage. They just care more about getting net neutrality sorted out, and that's fair enough. Now, an argument can be made that at a state level, kind of a state attorney, he's probably going to have more impact on issues such as kind of a ban on same-sex marriage than he is going to have on net neutrality as a whole for the entire nation. But nonetheless, they've got kind of their priority is net neutrality. They're going to give their money to people who are going to help further their goals. So, yeah, Facebook is innocent in this regard.
Yeah, I mean, that was sort of the question, is a question of impact. You know, as for me, I think, I mean, one attorney general in Utah, I don't think is going to have much impact on net neutrality. I'm thinking more he might have an effect on trying to bring back that ban for same-sex marriage in Utah. Now, you guys make some good points saying that, yeah, it's the domino that's going to fall, and net neutrality is definitely super important. So but you have to also look at, like I said, who's going to have more of an impact on what. If they're not going to have a lot of an impact on net neutrality, but more impact on, on the same-sex marriage ban, then it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for Facebook to support that guy if he's not going to make that much of a difference. So, I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I mean, the thing is as well, Facebook, I mean, $10,000, that's kind of pocket money for a company like Facebook. Would it not have been in Facebook's interest, because obviously now they're having to defend themselves a bit here, and okay, it's a rather easy attack to slap away. But could they have not said to Sean Reyes, look, we understand that kind of you're against gay marriage, and we'd like to be able to support you in your push for net neutrality. We'd love that, but we can't because your stance on gay marriage. We can only give you kind of $5,000. However, if you say, no, I'm not that bothered about the gay marriage issue, I'm going to let that lie, that's not a cause I'm going to fight for anymore, we might give you $20,000. You know, if they give them the money, you know, show them the money and they will do, sort of thing. I mean, the legality of that's another issue. There probably is some loophole in your American system that they could do that anyway. So I don't know why Facebook didn't do that in this instance.
I can give you a good reason why they shouldn't do that, because I guarantee you that would come out and it would look worse. But on the other side, keep in mind one of the benefits progressives have at the moment is, for the most part, corporate spending for political interest, and I mean changing political minds, is done by corporations with more right-wing leanings. If Facebook starts doing that and saying, oh, but we might throw a little extra if you change your mind on this gay rights issue, the right will go ballistic, and suddenly a lot of progressive credibility is lost. And I think that's not a trade-off worth playing. It's not worth playing their game that way to make your point. I think the dominoes are falling. I don't want to get caught in that mess. I think it's a very dangerous game to play, and you don't want to be the one that suddenly destroys all progressive credibility in various avenues of anti-corporate spending. So,
right, and look at the optics of it too. You know, do you think? I mean, I think it might have a little bit of an impact on public perception of Facebook. You know, oh, look at that, you're supporting this, you know, this douchebag. I mean, a lot of LGBT publications have jumped onto this and are like, Facebook, what are you doing? I thought you were supposed to be LGBT friendly, right? And then they'll point out, well, we do support these guys too, right? So I'm wondering if you guys think if Facebook will take a hit in the PR department over this, and how big of one it'll be.
I think they will, but they could have lessened. I mean, I think their statement is fair enough. I wouldn't have expected much more from them, but I would have liked it if they'd come out and said, you know, something to the effect that, you know, we think that kind of Sean Reyes' views on kind of trying to ban same-sex marriage, kind of they're stupid and ignorant, but we care more about net neutrality. We know, and everyone in the nation knows, that kind of gay marriage, anyone who supports gay marriage is on the right side of justice here. It's going to happen. There's nothing that Sean Reyes is going to be able to do with that $10,000 to stop gay marriage happening in Utah. If they came out more strongly and said something like that, then I think people would go, okay, Facebook know kind of they're definitely in favor of LGBT. I mean, they are anyway. I think that's quite clear. No one's saying they're not. But I would have liked a stronger statement from them, you know, supporting that fact.
But think about how that looks if you're Sean Reyes. All of a sudden, you're going, what the hell? You just gave me money and we're going to be friends in this net neutrality thing, and now you're saying I'm basically meaningless in all this? What the hell? It still doesn't look good there. I mean, for different reasons, because now it makes you sound like the guy you just bought is pointless to begin with. And I mean, it's not a good way of, if you are playing the money in politics game, that's not the wisest way of doing it.
They can still make an argument and say, we don't think that, you know, his position will have any impact on gay marriage, but we think in his position he has greater impact on the case of net neutrality and getting something done there within the state. They could make that argument. I mean, I probably wouldn't agree with that case, but they could make that argument. I think that would be a better way. I mean, they probably shouldn't come out as strongly as I worded it. You're probably right there, but I feel like they maybe should have just said a bit more in terms of at least saying kind of gay marriage is going to happen. We're not too worried about his views, sort of thing, in regards to gay marriage. That's not our concern. I just want them to say something a little bit more. Just give us that Obama change. Give us that 5-10% change in statement. Just a bit more strength.
But see, I would agree. There's a couple things I would need first before I would go with you on that one, though. The big thing is, I would need to know more about the nature of his stances on these things, in the sense that, does he just not believe in gay marriage, but he's not actively, like, super hardcore actively campaigning and spending all of his time against it? If so, then I would be concerned that making a statement too strong like that would kind of push him more in that direction. Think, oh my God, we're losing. I have to do more then. All of a sudden, and I don't know. I think it's a tricky business. If he already is at that point, then whatever. Then there's no going back from that. I think it really depends on which he's advocating more strongly for at the time, and which he is willing to campaign for more.
Yeah, I mean, one could make the argument that he's now been given, for him in his position, it's a hefty sum of money from an internet firm that are saying we care about net neutrality. He's maybe thinking, maybe if I kind of do something on net neutrality, I may get a bit more money, sort of thing. Maybe I will ignore that. So maybe, in a way, they are helping the LGBT cause. They're saying, we care about net neutrality. If you do, if you help support that and you ignore your other if you prioritize the way we prioritize, then you may get more money. And there's a whole ton of issues whether that's kind of morally right and stuff. But you could make an argument in saying that giving them money, you're basically paying them off to not have ignorant views, which I don't necessarily agree with, because kind of gay rights, that's, as we said, that's going to happen anyway. There's no point throwing money at that cause because it's a one cause already. But you could make that argument as well.
See, there's a gradation here, though. I mean, money in politics in general is a bad idea, but there's definitely different degrees to how bad it is. They're the guys who, if you pay them enough money, they'll focus on your issue at the time, and it's an issue they already agree with, and they'll devote that attention to. Then there's outright buying politicians wholesale and completely changing their views based on money. That, I think, is a much more dangerous and nefarious game, and that, I think, is what the issue is here, is you give them too much and you're running that risk, and not only do I think that's morally wrong, if that comes out, it really looks bad. So I get what you're saying, Stephen. I don't think it's the right course.
I think just before, like, Sean will probably want to wrap this up. It really, all this kind of what we've been going back and forth in, it really does depend on the mind of Sean Reyes, and how heavily against gay marriage is he, how heavily in favour of net neutrality, how much work and time and devotion does he give to each cause. We don't know. We don't know kind of the intricacies of the inner workings of his mind. So we'll have to wait and see how it plays out in this case.
You called Jeff Sean there.
My bad.
Oh, that's horrible. You'll never be forgiven. Anyway, before we wrap this up, I just want to ask the obvious question: guilty, not guilty? What's your vote?
Not guilty.
Yeah, not guilty.
On principle, I will vote guilty because it won't have any sort of effect. Talk about being consistent. All right. We go on to our next story here. Interesting. Now here on TYT Community, we often rag on conservatives for not giving a shit about the environment, or blocking solar, green jobs, and getting paid off by big oil to do so. Now, most of them do, but apparently not all of them. I have a pretty good example. A Wisconsin Republican in 2010 named Martin Newman ran on the idea of urging the GOP to adopt and create a conservative green energy movement. What? Now, don't worry, if you're a conservative. He was clobbered by the other ones. So he was immediately set upon by the wolves and just torn apart by his entire party. Epic. But fast forward a few years later, and now you have his son, Matt Newman, trying to do the same thing, but in a different way. Now, Matt Newman is not running for office, but he does intend on using some of his power to convince state legislatures in Wisconsin to begin adopting more solar energy. Now, so far, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it's good news. I don't care about his political views or his motives, really, at the end of the day. If he's increasing green energy and trying to take a bit of that power away from kind of the coal industry and the oil industry, and he's going to be creating some jobs and stuff. It's good news at the end of the day. I don't care who's doing it and where they're coming from. It's a good result.
Indeed. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm glad you brought that up. Matt and his father co-own a solar installation company, so they stand to make a considerable amount of money from this. Now, I don't really have an issue because in this case, we need more people to adopt renewable energy, such as solar. And a little bit of information about what's going on in Wisconsin and what they're facing is that energy companies are now trying to charge everyone a fixed rate instead of charging on how much you use. Now, that essentially means that no matter how much energy you use, you will always be charged the same amount of money that is at the discretion of the utility companies. So they can raise it however much they want, even if you're using solar panels and are actually feeding energy into the grid. And part of this law would also reduce the amount of paybacks that you would get. So solar, people who use solar panels would be shafted in several different ways. So it makes sense that this guy, that Newman, would definitely be against that. And also for attempting to expand solar. Now, Newman makes an interesting argument about this to try and get conservatives on board, and he actually makes a conservative argument for it. Now, he argues that the choice to choose how to power their home is a conservative value. Very interesting. He says, quote, how you finance that acquisition, the ability to lower your long-term energy costs, those are very conservative principles, and yet for some reason, we're struggling to adapt. For some reason. Could it be the fact that most of your politicians in Wisconsin have their head so far up Exxon's ass they can, I don't know how to end that, but they've got their head so far up Exxon's ass, pretty much. So Newman, look, this Newman, in my opinion, he's not really a saint. I think he's looking at this through an economic angle. Once again, fine. And I'm actually really happy to see him push his party to try to adopt more green energy, even if it's for his own economic ends. And the benefit of consumers when it comes to preventing those rate hikes. Now, he does disappoint me a little bit on his views on climate change, but he says, quote, I don't know on climate change. I have no idea. I would have to study it a lot more and probably should, given the industry we're in. I'm being totally honest with you. I just don't plain know. So a little bit disappointing, but as my panelists might have a different idea, let's go to them.
Well, I mean, first of all, at least he's, in terms of climate change, he's one of the rare exceptions in the kind of Republican politician conservatives where they said, I just don't know. Like, don't ask me on it. That's fine. At least he's being honest. If he came out and said, that's almost, the best answer is to say, yes, of course it's happening, and yes, humans are contributing towards it. But if he's not willing to go that far, if he's not willing to do any studying, at least just say, I don't know, it doesn't matter to me. It's just a case of he's trying to make the point to his conservative allies, look, there's money to be made here, and as an added bonus, it may also help us politically as well. They just care about the money first and foremost. And if he can prove through hard numbers and statistics that this is going to make money and it's going to make money for the state, then all of his conservatives will get on board. The fact it's green energy and it's going to kind of create jobs and everything, he may even bring some independents and some Democrats on board as well. It should be a win-win-win-win situation for him here. But the problem is it's kind of the old money, it's the old companies, the coal companies that are going to try and stifle him out because he's a challenge. He may take 2 or 3% away from their profits in the coming years, and they don't like that at all. That's really the only issue here.
Nick?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with both of you. I think his answer was the best answer. Because I think the best answer is to say, first and foremost, I don't know, I'm not qualified. I think that's fine. Deferring to the experts who do know is better. But I would take I don't know, I'm not qualified any day over yes it is. Just because I think it's the more honest answer to give. Whether or not it actually is happening, which climate change is happening, we know that. For him, the honest answer and the best answer is to say I don't know, because he admits he doesn't. And I think that's totally fair, and I'm happy he answered that way rather than saying yes it is, just because it's being honest. And I think that's honesty is probably the best policy, especially in this debate where the challenge is winning over the scientific community and progressive individuals. The challenge is winning over the much more conservative population who are looking for any excuse to miss it, to jump on it. And a lie is the best example they can think of. Always lying about it, therefore shouldn't listen to it. So it's all about, so a lot of it's about image and setting the right one. Saying I don't know is, I think, by far the best thing he could have done in this situation. So.
And maybe, yeah, and you bring up a good point. Maybe if he was too honest, he would completely ruin his chances to push the GOP in his state over to blue green energy. Because immediately, if he says, well, I do believe in climate change, he's going to get left out of the room. They're going to call him an Al Gore plant. Oh my God, you're working for George Soros. Get out of here, you loony liberal. And, this guy, he's like, yeah, I'm a staunch conservative, but there's money in this. And so it stands to reason that he might believe in it. He might think that this is a good way to get him, using conservative principles. So it stands to reason that he could be lying about saying, I don't know, and just say, well, that's the best thing that I can do. That's the best thing I can say. Just like you were saying, Nick. This is the best thing I can say to get these people on board, because if I'm truly honest about what I think, what the science says, then my fellow conservatives are going to turn away from me, and then that's going to ruin my economic interest as well. So I'm just going to say, I don't know, I'll look into it, I'm not going to dismiss it offhand, but really what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to sell the whole notion that this is conservative, that this is a conservative idea that can make money, it can work, it can help bring jobs to Wisconsin, which we're in need of, and it's going to be a good thing all around. It's also going to help conservation, which is something that conservatives used to be for. I mean, after all, Nixon created the fucking EPA.
I think
Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, those were conservative ideals back in the day before they were bought by the Koch brothers.
I'd go as far to say that this guy maybe is smarter than, people are giving. He's smarter than the average Republican. Let's put it that way, because he's saying, "Oh, I don't know. I work in the energy industry. Maybe I should know a bit more." I think he does know actually a bit more, and that he is trying to straddle the fence so that he can try and cozy up to both sides of the political aisle. But I mean, I suppose it's smart, but you're selling yourself. It's a bit tragic, really, in that he's selling himself to be dumber than he actually is, because that's going to help win, in this case, over the Republican side. It's a tragic case, but if it's going to create some green jobs and create some kind of more money in the state, then I suppose kind of pretending to be a little bit ignorant maybe is the best case in this scenario.
And it'll also put more money in his own pocket, because once again, he co-owns with his father a solar panel installation business. So it's good for him economically too. So, I mean, we can't let that, we can't forget that. And I think that that's fine. I think that he's able, I'm in favor of this guy, because he is, I don't have any problem with him making money, because he's not destroying the environment doing it. All right. I think that's pretty much what everybody has to say on this one. We can move on to another story that we have. Wasn't even trying to be clever with this one. All right. Jimmy John's is being sued by a pair of former employees for engaging in what they consider is systemic wage theft. Here we go. Now, these two workers who worked at different locations in Illinois for Jimmy John's accused the company of setting policies that caused a failure to pay for all hours worked, minimum wages, and overtime wages. Now, simply put, workers say that these corporate policies force workers to put in more hours off the clock, and then the company will refuse to reimburse them for those extra hours. Now, they also claim that they enforced that whole thing through the use of a computer monitoring system and mandatory nightly reports from individual store owners that get directly sent over to corporate headquarters. Now, this lawsuit names both the franchise owner and corporate headquarters as well in the suit. Already, what do you guys think?
Well, first of all, as a non-American, I can just say that Jimmy John's is an awful name for a apparently gourmet sandwich restaurant. It just sounds awful. But in terms of kind of not being paid for doing over and above the kind of number of hours you're contracted to do, like I've had a number of jobs where, you know, you're only supposed to do so many hours, but you end up working almost 24/7 in some places, and you do work above and beyond what you're requested to do, and you don't get paid any extra for that, and that's part of the contract, and you understand that. But that's working at places like kind of summer schools and stuff like this. For what is kind of a 9-to-5 kind of restaurant-based job, you can't have that sort of business model. It's just, I don't want to say it's morally wrong, it's just, you know, corporations are amoral, they don't care, they're trying to make as much money as possible. But the fact they've got that this restaurant chain has gone to such great lengths, it seems, to try and stop giving as much money to their employees as they can, I feel like this lawsuit is warranted, and so I hope that kind of the workers do get the money that they're deserved for working the extra hours and the overtime.
See, I agree. I agree with Stephen. I'm going to bring a personal anecdote. I worked for an organization, and they'd set out clearly that we don't do overtime hours. If you wind up staying for overtime, please understand that at this point it is you are volunteering for the company. We're not going to task you over hours. If we do that, then you will get paid. But if you stay over time, we're not going to pay you overtime. So be aware of that. If these organizations had said that at the start and said, look, we don't want to pay overtime. If we task you with overtime work, then you will be paid, obviously. But if you're going to stay of your own volition, then we're not going to pay you overtime. I would be more accepting of that. I'd still be iffy, but it would make sense. You can't have workers staying overtime for time and a half pay just because they want time and a half pay when you're a company trying to make money. That it's, for one thing, it incentivizes overwork and it burns people out, and the other thing, it would probably lose you money eventually. But that's not the case here. They weren't telling people that they weren't going to pay them overtime, and they're not paying some of them for even their full-time work. So that's the problem here.
And that's why it's considered wage theft. And look, this isn't the only company that's been accused of these sorts of practices. Our favorite company to pick on is McDonald's. And they, of course, face similar lawsuits on the basis that this computer system that they use encourages managers to manipulate worker time cards in order to keep their costs low while still squeezing more productivity out of their workers. Is that a surprise? No, not really. In fact, former McDonald's managers have described being told to manipulate workers' timesheets to avoid paying overtime. So, like I said, it wouldn't surprise me to see Jimmy John's and other fast food restaurants willing to do these same practices in order to basically pad their bottom lines, increase their profits. It really is kind of a sick thing that we have going on here. Just what happened to paying people for an honest day's work?
I mean, the thing is, I mean, at the end, I mean, first of all, I mean, I don't know how big Jimmy John's is. Is it quite a large established company? Is it kind of nationwide? Is it just in a few states and not like how big?
It's pretty large, actually.
Okay, fair enough.
There's a lot of Jimmy John's around, at least in my area. So
Can I just say I'm amazed how many different chains you guys have in the States. I mean, here I thought all your chains were international. There are so many chains you have there. I don't even I've never heard of these places ever. That's amazing. You boggle my mind,
realize
America.
That's part of America. We got choices. Choices on
And all of
what
them are
fast
terrible.
food place we want to make us
They're all
fat.
terrible choices, but you have choices.
Yeah.
Exactly.
America.
But the thing is, at the end of the day with this story is that the workers, if they have worked, over the space of a month, 300 hours, then they need to get paid at least 300 hours worth of minimum wage pay per hour. If they haven't been paid that, then their wages have been stolen. Then if you then you've got to factor in and make it a bit more confusing in terms of how much overtime they've worked and so on and so forth. But if they've worked so many hours, they at least need to be paid minimum wage for those hours, and they're going to hopefully in the lawsuit they look at a case-by-case basis, and if they can prove it over a number of cases, honestly I hope it costs the company a lot of money. And whilst I don't want the company to go out of business, because then that's obviously going to cost a lot of jobs and stuff, and that's devastating for a lot of places, but I just hope that these people get the money that they deserve. They've worked hard for it. They deserve it.
Can I just finish off my bit of the segment by agreeing with Steven's very first point by saying there's a chain called Jimmy John's. That's ridiculous. What a terrible name. At least here in Canada we have Tim Hortons. Come on, much better.
You get the Tim Hortons here, right?
Huh? You have Tim Hortons down there now too, eh?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, Canada's going low. All right.
I literally went down the road, so Then again, I'm in Michigan, and Canada I've always considered America's hat. So
America's American dream hat.
Canada is the hat that's got like a little windmill on it. It's one of those uncool hats.
So that has the American dream.
If Canada is our hat, right? What does that make America?
What does that make Florida, more importantly?
Oh, good one, sir. Now, the whole fucked up thing about this too is that a lot of these fast food places, I think it's common practice to try and load, as few people as possible to get as much done as possible. And it only makes sense, right? You pay fewer people less money to get more done. I mean, Americans are more productive than we've ever been, and yet we're also overworked, and now these places are literally stealing your wages for putting in all that extra productivity. It's just sick, the kind of corporate culture we have now, where it's all about short-term profits and squeeze the worker for as much as possible. This is why places like Jimmy John's, which are actually very, very obviously anti-union and have cracked down on any sort of unionization attempts, that's why you need these unions. That's why you need people to get together and say, we're not going to take this anymore. We're going to band together, and we're going to hold you accountable. We want to be equal here. We want to have an equal voice with your company and say that we're not going to work for any less than this. We're not going to take this wage theft anymore. We do deserve some rights. Besides, if the union's not, if there's no union, who's going to fight for you? And that's what I always say. They're not perfect. And there's umpteen problems with unions. But at the end of the day, who's going to fight for you? Who's going to fight against corporations that do this kind of thing? Nobody. You can't fight a corporation by yourself.
Spider-Man, but everybody only gets one.
Good point. All right. There's that. Now, there is one more story, but it's not. It's going to be rather short here, since it is just breaking news. But I think you might appreciate the graphic. At least I do. Then again, I made it. So, anyway.
He looks so devilishly smart. My God, he must be a professor. Look at those glasses. Look at them.
Amazing.
How can he not be smart?
It's an amazing disguise.
He's clearly Clark Kent.
He's like the Clark Kent of stupid.
Except the inverse, because when he puts on the glasses, he looks like the Superman of smart.
That's what I'm saying. He's like the Clark Kent of stupid. He takes the glasses off and then puts a corn dog in his mouth and, well...
Education. Education is his kryptonite.
That's if he could remember which departments he wants to shut down. Of course. Anyway. Continue. So Governor Rick Perry is in a little bit of trouble as a grand jury just recently handed down an indictment against the governor of Texas in connection to an investigation in an effort to force a Travis County district attorney to resign. So basically, he's getting in trouble for abuse of power. Interesting. Now, some a little bit more information about this. At the center of this is a complaint about intimidation stemming from Rick Perry threatening to veto $7.5 million in state funding to something called the Public Integrity Unit. Now, that says a lot. I'm not thinking Rick Perry has a whole lot of public integrity. Now, this office was headed by Rosemary Lemberg, and she basically got in trouble for drunk driving. She served 45 days in jail, and Rick Perry had called on her to resign. She refused to resign, and he threatened to pull the funding, and he did. So this grand jury was called in to determine whether or not pulling that funding was basically against the law. And guess what? This comes with 2 felony charges, and that's abuse of official capacity and coercion of a public servant. And get this, if found guilty, he could be sentenced to a maximum of 109 years. Oops. Thoughts?
This is brilliant. It's like it's another person who could have been running for president. You know, I reckon he might have done better in 2016. And there's been another kind of Bridgegate-esque scandal that's happened now. It's only just breaking in. You know, it's impossible right now to gauge the impact that this will have. But this certainly isn't going to help his presidential prospects. And he's certainly wanting to run in 2016. He's probably thinking, oh, shit. But as to the actual substance of the story as well, he has abused his power, and there's so many Republicans that are saying, "Oh, look at Obama abusing executive privilege! Like, how dare he kind of bully people around? How dare he kind of do all these things?" And kind of it's one of their top people. You know, he's one of the kind of the faces of the GOP party, one of the establishment faces. He's now been proven, well, you know, he's being brought up on charges of bullying public officials. It's I wanted to say it's great. Obviously, it's not great that he's bullying public officials and he's withdrawing funding from the state, but it's great that it's now come to light, and hopefully he's going to get in a lot of trouble for it.
Yeah, this is a delightful little story. It's so entertaining. It is a little mixed, though. Perry has his moments where he's like, all right, and he's in the right there. I'm pretty sure his stance on marijuana was a little more progressive than most Republicans. I think he was somewhat in favor of decriminalization. Obviously, his stance of immigration was a huge problem, and his conviction in gay reparative therapy was also very, very bad. But he had one or two issues that people could be like, all right, so he's right on that. But as the commonly stated sentence goes, a broken clock is right twice a day. So shouldn't keep him in. He shouldn't be kept in office for crap reasons. So yeah, this is entertaining.
It's good news for two groups of people. It's certainly good for the Democrats because it's going to hurt him in 2016 if he does run. This can be brought back up, and it's also good news for Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, he's looking better and better every day as prominent Republicans are falling out, and if it looks good for Mitt Romney, then Mitt Romney running also looks good for the Democrats. So at the end of the day, it's brilliant for any Democrat who's going to be running. But Mitt Romney, he must have, I assume that he might have heard about the story now. He's probably rubbing his hands with glee. He's praying to his Mormon God, saying, "Thank you. This is another obstacle out of the way potentially." It's brilliant stuff.
I don't think Romney's gonna run again, but he can at least go.
Oh,
Oh, thank
I don't
God!
know.
People are
I don't
hating me
know.
a lot. People are hating me less and less after that last election now. Thankfully, finally, more people are realizing everyone else is stupid. Until he makes another statement like, "But why don't poor people just buy more money?"
Yeah, why don't poor people just stop being poor? I never quite understood that. Why don't they just buy money? Oh, God. Anyway, to avoid getting on the track of speculation towards 2016, this, I hate to say it, but it's a feel-good story to me. I don't think it. I think he's rather deserving of it. Look, we don't know what's going to happen, of course. Odds are he's not. I mean, speculation. He's probably not going to get prison time for this, but we don't know for certain. Seems like they're pretty serious charges. I mean, this indictment seriously. It says that they take this very seriously. They believe that the state has a strong enough case to send at least to trial. So, I mean, he's not. What they said, hasn't been found guilty of this, but it should be interesting to keep up on what's going to happen here. Certainly, the optics of it don't look good for a possible 2016 run. And maybe, Wendy Davis might be looking a little bit better to take over Texas. You don't know. We'll have to see, but the jury's out on it.
For progressives, Wendy Davis has always looked good. The problem is I don't know if it'll convince any conservatives that Wendy Davis is looking good. Maybe some, but
well,
the challenge is there are few and few conservatives these days who actually follow on the issues carefully. All right, sorry, Stephen, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, at the end of the day, kind of Rick Perry, he's not bulletproof, but he's a rich white man in power. He's not going to end up going to prison for this, and so at the end of the day, he probably will end up coming out politically bruised, and I imagine that'll be the end of it. I'd like to see him go to prison if he's found guilty. That'd be brilliant, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with that. I mean, like I said, we'll keep you guys updated on this if anything more comes out, and we'll report on anything when it happens. It's probably going to be a long process, so.
Probably. I mean, here's the thing. I hope he doesn't serve any jail time for this, because from what I understood from the story, while he definitely overstepped his bounds and he violated a major tenet, his reasoning seemed to be better than you think. Didn't strike the case didn't seem like one so much of corruption so much as stupidly overzealously trying to pursue a moral crusade against a woman who was convicted of drunk driving. That's more the message I got, not any deviancy or major corruption. So it's almost there is a smidgen of me that almost feels bad, because it's like the idiot who just tries too hard for a good reason doesn't realize when he's done something really, really stupid and wrong.
Now this is the same type of person that is trying to sue President Obama for doing his own job. I don't feel sorry for him whatsoever.
Fair point.
and that's it. I mean, I don't feel sorry for him. He's of the same party that's trying to, like I said, sue President Obama over doing his job. And here he is, accusing President Obama, okay, and the Democrats of overstepping their authority, while at the same time overstepping his. And trying to pull funding from something called the Public Integrity Unit. Come on. He ain't got no public integrity. All right. We're done. No more stories. Rather short show today. If you guys do have some questions, we can do a short Q&A. Maybe take about 10 minutes, 20 minutes or something, answer some of your questions on the show. If you want to tweet it at us, hashtag TYT Community, put a couple of questions in the chat. If not, we'll head on out and maybe look at making Thursdays our designated question day. Thursdays or Fridays, we're not quite sure yet. So if you guys have a preference on when to do the Q&As,
YouTube chat. Sorry. YouTube chat, stop talking to Iron Nation about stupid stuff in the chat. Focus on the show. It's Q&A time. Come on, guys. Chop chop.
Here's a question from Thomas Reynolds. Some say info, Flint's Doubting Tom. Well, whatever you want to call him. By the way, great show earlier today, Tom. I did listen in a bit, so we had some people calling in from the audience in that show. Anyway, he asked if we're all going to watch Meet the Press on Sunday with the David Gregory send-off. No, not on my life. I got better things to do. Are you guys going to watch?
What's Meet the Press? I know what it is, but I've never watched it, nor do I ever plan to. So no, definitely not.
Because part of my kind of PhD involves watching kind of the news, kind of the cable news channels and things like that. I will watch it. It'll be a bit like kind of tragedy porn. I just want to see how bad it is and how we did such good stuff and kind of look at the great interviews that kind of David Gregory has done and stuff. It's going to be so it's going to be painful to watch. It's going to be so bad, and that's why I'm going to love it. It's going to be cringe-worthy. It's going to be cringe TV. So yeah, I'm going to admit it, but yeah, I am probably going to watch it.
Oh, Steven.
All for the tragedy porn angle. That's actually funny and a little sad. But even more sad for David Gregory. Now, the problem I have with this whole thing, and I know I probably mentioned it before, but it's not going to be any different when Chuck Todd takes over. It's still going to be corporate whore doing corporate whore things. Basically saying, look, we're going to suck up to the establishment. It's not going to change. You can't... And the reason it's not going to change, before I get into anything further, is that swapping out the same corporate shill with another corporate shill is not going to change the core of the program. And the core of the program is that it's an insiders club only. We want access, so we're going to be insiders. We don't challenge the people that are on our show if they're powerful. We're not going to do any of that. And that is why they are failing. That is why people are not watching them, because they don't challenge anyone that comes on. They're just corporate shills, corporate whores that are in it for the establishment. And that's the real problem, that nobody watches Meet the Press. And why would they?
So the next question, I think.
Okay, so Lucy asks, and this is a good question, how do you feel about how Robin Williams' death was covered by all forms of media? I'll answer this one first. I think some of this was incredibly shameful. I remember reading how ABC had set up a live stream outside his fucking house, all while on the same page where it pointed out that the Williams family wanted privacy. Yeah, set up a fucking live stream outside of his house. Incredibly disrespectful. I think this has been a very disrespectful thing, and unfortunately it's something we do with a lot of people that are in the media that are famous. It's despicable.
Yeah, I would agree. Although I wouldn't quite be that harsh. I mean, obviously the things like the flyovers of Robin Williams' house is a little necessary. I mean, this isn't like Alabama and Oklahoma after those tornadoes hit. We don't need flyovers of the area. Like, for what good reason do you need a flyover of Robin Williams' house? That's just freaking weird. But and then of course there was the given Rush Limbaugh stupidity. The only person who made it political, like the living sack of shit and slime that he is, doesn't deserve to be called human. But other than that, and the various news articles that paid more attention on his death, the nature of his death, rather than his accomplishments in life, I think was a little crass too. Other than that, and I realize those are a bunch of fairly big caveats, I thought it was handled okay. I didn't think there was as much crap thrown about, especially not from non-journalistic media, like social media, did a very good job of, I think, being respectful about this. There was no people like when Michael Jackson died, for example. There were crap tons of people who shat on him to no end because he did some weird things in life. Yes, but it's like just let it go. Let that stuff go for when he's dead.
I mean, the social media.
This was quite good.
The social media wasn't perfect, so obviously his because of that. But I think with the Robin Williams death, the ABC flyover of his house, that was rather appalling sort of thing. But yeah, certainly here in the British press, the papers like the Sun and the Daily Mail and stuff, those who expect to cover it in a certain manner, they covered it in the same manner that they cover most celebrity deaths. It was a kind of bit gaudy, a bit too intrusive, but you expect that from those sorts of publications. I think, which is sad, and they shouldn't do it, but it wasn't a great shock to many people. If the Guardian or the Times over here, kind of invasively kind of invaded his privacy, then I would have had more of a problem. I think it's just the fact that ABC, you expect them to hold themselves to a bit of a higher standard than, kind of the Daily Post or
like an actual journalistic outfit having standards. Well, not in America.
Well, you've got maybe Los Angeles Times and a couple of other state papers you might give some credence to every now and again, but yeah, otherwise you guys are buggered.
All right. More questions. And by the way, shout out to Eva Roberts for collecting questions for us. Much appreciated. It makes it a little bit easier to gather your questions. Do we want to do
the Zapatistas one?
Yeah. Go ahead.
You can throw it to everybody. I don't know why it was asked to me. If you want, I don't know much about it, so.
I don't really know a whole lot about that either.
Yeah.
I've never even heard that word.
I mean, I did a very cursory look. It's a revolutionary organization in Mexico. This is your Zapatistas question, whoever that was who asked that. So, revolutionary organization after an agrarian worker. I don't really know what to say about them. They seem kind of like following on the coattails of Che Guevara and that sort of ideology, with much less of the wanting to define themselves politically, and kind of moved away from violence and more into a venue of social sports. So I would give credit for that, in that they're not actively using violence now. They're conducting a media campaign to garner support, and I think that's hands down the smarter option for everything. Violence, I think, is never really a good answer. But beyond that, I can't really comment. I don't know too much about what they stand for and what they hope to achieve and anything. So that's the best I think I can do. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to say about that.
All right, so we'll go on. Basically, naming your child after a video game character, acceptable or no? I don't see why not. You can name your kid whatever the fuck you want.
Hell freaking yes. My kid is going to be named Revan, hands down.
And here's another thing. Oh, excellent. Here's another thing.
Yeah, you've got that reference.
If you want to name your kid after, fictional characters, why not Jesus? The reason that I bring that up, too, by the way, is that there are, I think there was a certain couple whose child was denied that name by a judge. That's, you can't name your kid after Jesus. You can't do that because it's Jesus. No, you can name your kid whatever the fuck you want. I might hate you for it, but tough.
They recently, here in the UK, there was an article out today in most of the papers where the most popular 100 baby names, the boys and females of 2013, were released. And in 2013, there were 123 Aryas who were named. There were 32 Lokis, 17 Thors. I think those are they're just on the very boundary of being reasonable. If you want to name your kid like Zereth, or something kind of really weird and abstract, or Cloud, like he's a Final Fantasy gaming character, I don't think you're helping your kid. You really not. It may sound cute and when he's 8 years old and stuff, but when he's 45 years old, a grown man, a builder called Cloud, it's just give your kid a sensible name. Just think it through. You can do whatever you want, but I'd be against you naming anything kind of ridiculously stupid, but you're free to do what you want.
Well, I knew somebody with the name of Rain, so I mean, All right. So anyway, on to Stan's question. What do you think of the net slowdown crisis or crises? He asks. I think it's a disaster. If you slow down the internet, and I'm assuming you're talking about net neutrality on this. We're huge proponents of net neutrality, obviously, because you can't create a fast lane and a slow lane on the internet. That's not what works. That's a terrible idea, because it basically creates a two-tiered system, a toll road. If you want the same service, and especially if you're doing something like we are, if you can't afford to pay that toll, you end up losing out to the people who can. I mean, that's why Netflix ran out to make a deal. Okay, I believe it was either Comcast or Time Warner, in order to keep their speeds up to speed. And that's a bit of a problem, because competitors of Netflix now have to make the same deal, and if they can't pony up, they're going to lose business. The internet is supposed to be a free and fair and open, even playing field for everybody. Whether it comes to me doing my videos or CNN doing their videos, everybody deserves to be in the same playing field here. And that's why it is a crisis, and that's a problem.
There's nothing I can say. Jeff, you hit the nail on the head, and you probably know better than the rest of us. This is your show. This directly threatens your livelihood. So yeah, you are by far. We defer to your authority on this matter, and your well-researched and well-structured argument. So there's nothing I can say.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, the internet is becoming more and more of an important part in everyone's lives. Kind of, the UN is calling it almost a human rights sort of thing, kind of water, shelter, food, and access to the internet, which is basically access to information. If you're curtailing people's access to the internet, it's like, rather than having a kind of full-flowing stream of water, you've just given them a drip of water. Like, oh, you're still able to get some water, but it's not the amount that people need and kind of morally deserve. So I mean, what Jeff said is all absolutely right. It's atrocious, and one hopes it'll get better. One hopes net neutrality will come into effect, but you just got to cross your fingers at this point, really.
All right, this is a continuation on this, and I can't believe I'm answering this, but do you think the death of net neutrality might be beneficial somehow by causing the creation of new technology, a new internet? No. There's one internet. It's not a series of tubes. Okay. No, it's not going to grow innovation. It's going to slow innovation. It's going to destroy startups. The only thing you're going to have are the bigger people who can afford to pay the toll on the fast lane. Because once again, you can create a two-tiered system, a fast lane and a slow lane, even though like, no, it's not a slow lane. It'll be the same thing. No, it's going to be slower than someone else.
Interestingly, just before you jump in there, it just so happened that this Twitter account, What the Fuck Facts, just happened to tweet the entire internet weighs about 0.2 millionths of an ounce. That's probably not true, and I don't know how they're measuring that. That's interesting. But I was just going to say, in terms of like it may create new technology, theoretically, it could force people or a corporation or two to create a web 3.0 where it's all done wirelessly and you can do it through molecules in the air and stuff. Theoretically, you could do that, but that's not going to happen. It would create so much upheaval in the world for that to happen. It's not going to happen. We're stuck with the internet. The internet's great. We just need to fix it. It's not completely broken, but let's at least try and fix it.
Yeah, I mean, I get what Iron was trying to suggest, that it might prompt more growth. But
I think
if there was no, hear me out. But growth, technological growth would happen anyway. And if there's a new way of in global communication at a at the tips of our fingertips so that we can instantly communicate with everyone from all over the world and share ideas and thoughts, that's better than the internet, then it'll take off naturally anyway. But the solution to get there isn't to stifle that one tool that we have at the moment that already does that. That's a bad idea. That doesn't help. It'll that just causes far too much unrest and damage at the time to do it. So no, it'll happen naturally if we get there. But we don't need to take down the internet. Christ, for all we know, the internet could be the very template, the very foundation of everything that comes next. Every modern development in technology, because it's a massive digital web and network and hard drive of information. That's almost the pinnacle of what we can imagine as far as the transfer of information and data is concerned. The only thing that we can really imagine adding on to that are the bells and whistles that make it look better. Holograms and stuff. Chips in your heads or whatever the hell it is you want that allow you to stream the information there. That stuff is all bells and whistles to the fact that it's still all up there in the cloud, all out there out in the web. That doesn't disappear. That will never disappear. It will always be there, and it should always be unfettered. I think one of the only things we can really do is add on to how we use it and how effectively that comes out. And this is only working to undermine that.
Right. Okay, so Stan clarified his question. I think we misunderstood him. Now, he asked what do you think about the net slowdown crisis? And he refers to it as about the infrastructure not being able to handle the new network load. Now, okay, so I'm not quite sure what you're referring to, but I'm going to take a stab at it anyway, and think that I kind of think you might be talking about the lack of IP addresses, right? We're on something called IPv4, right? So we're IP version 4, and what that means is that you really have to get into knowing the internet about this, right? And so explaining it gets a little involved. But let's just say there are only so many addresses that you can use in IPv4, right? But we already have a solution for that, and it's IPv6. So once we phase over to or transfer over to IPv6, all of those IP addresses and all the stuff that we're using that requires an IP address will be able to be recognized on the internet, and then we'll be able to have all the different devices connect to the internet just fine. And I think that is sort of the backbone infrastructure of the internet. When it comes to actual infrastructure, as far as like network towers and cables and things like that, I definitely think we do need to keep upgrading that. Here in America, we don't have the greatest internet. I think it's even worse in Canada, but
we do have, although lately they've been really upping it, but we did have, for a long time, we have at least had caps on internet bandwidth, and one of the big service providers, Bell, does have a tendency to actually turn them down, or used to turn them down at night, so your bandwidth was limited. But that was, we also had, but that was for everybody. There was no, you didn't get out of it for being certain things, unless maybe you were university and you had D++, but that was that was almost like a university, it's a separate network altogether. So
right.
Everyone who was on a public internet, or by public I mean available for the general public to pay subscription fees for, and whatever it was, they all had the same limitations. So no one got the fast lane or slow lane. We were all kind of in the medium-ish lane, but I think they've been changing that now. I've noticed the amount of downloading rate I have has definitely increased from what it used to be. So I think they're kind of trying to lift off the caps, and I think they should.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of our infrastructure isn't caught up to the transfer over to IPv6, but that's something that we should invest in, definitely. And the United States, like America, is kind of spoiled because we have control over a lot of the internet infrastructure. I mean, it's kind of been our thing, right? But that doesn't mean that there aren't other countries that are surpassing us when it comes to infrastructure. I think South Korea and Japan have just amazing internet infrastructure in place, that they have speeds much faster than we do here in the States. And of course, they leave poor Canada out in the dust. Sorry, guys. But yeah, so we definitely do need to do something about the slowdown crisis, about the infrastructure, and that's going to involve a lot of investment. And I hope we're able to make it. But anyway, next question.
Canada. Do the Canada one.
What Canada one? Oh, what is your advice to people that want to move to Canada or England? Well, that's not for me.
Yeah. Let's go. My advice is very simple. Come on over. That's all I can say. Get over here before your American country falls all to hell. We're happy to have you up here. Just keep your crazy down south. We don't want that.
Hey, you know, one of our crazy came from Canada.
I know, and we're just gonna leave them there, down where you are, and forget about that whole mess. But no, I think a lot of people would like Canada, and I think a lot of Americans would be surprised how not different it really is. The only things that I would say are very different would be the major issues that sort of plague you down there. We kind of don't have so much of a concern about corporations buying our politicians, although it's becoming a bigger and bigger concern, so it is something we have to deal with. We don't have gun violence like you do. Our religious right seems to be a lot more subdued than yours. It's secularists and atheists are all over the place here and pretty open about their stuff, and no one's forced religion down anyone's throat. That almost never comes up. What else is there? We have the subsidized healthcare, for crying out loud. It's going to be going through rough patch soon, as is the American privatized healthcare system, because as the baby boomers retired, it's going to put a ton of strain on the healthcare systems in general. But at least everyone still has it here, which is great. But really, beyond that, a lot of our media is the same. A lot of our chains are the same. I'm pretty sure. We all watch the same movies, same shows. We all have a lot of the same interests. So really, I think a lot of people would move here and really shortly after realize it's not very different at all from America. So.
No, well, I mean, the UK is certainly more different than Canada is different from America. But like serious advice, I'd say, like, if you're genuinely planning to come across and, you know, live here, you know, 5-10 years or whatever, and properly emigrate, already have a job lined up, sort of thing, so you can prove, look, I've got jobs, you know, and they let you into the country if you can prove that. If you don't have any real, like, qualifications at all, or, you know, anything going for you, it's going to make your life a lot harder, but it's not going to be impossible. If you've got family already here, or some sort of ties, and that's great. Otherwise, be prepared to drink a lot of tea, learn to drive on the correct side of the road. What else? Swear full loyalty to the Queen. No,
whoa, correct by whose standards? You are the only nation on Earth that drives on the wrong side of the road, Stephen. The only one.
Incorrect.
I call bollocks on you. Bollocks.
Well, bollocks on me.
I see what he did there.
Well, no, because New Zealand also drives on the left-hand side of the road.
Yeah, but the Kiwis don't count. They're Kiwis.
I think Sweden also drives on the left-hand side of the road.
The Swedes don't count either. They're awesome.
And I think the Japanese do.
The Japanese don't drive?
No, they have their robots do it for them. But otherwise, I'd say that it's probably much easier to get into Canada than it is into the UK. For a start, you can walk into Canada. You're going to have to swim to the UK. But overall, I don't think... I think it's much harder for UK residents to emigrate across to the US than it is vice versa. I've had a friend who's marrying a girl down in Texas, and it's taken him ages to sort out the paperwork for him to kind of go across and be able to live there. So if you're willing to fill out paperwork and you kind of already line yourself up with a job over here, or you've already got a fairly good degree, kind of an MA or something like that, there'll be no problem at all. If you have nothing going for you, it may be a bit of an uphill climb.
All right. So next question. Lucy's been asking this for a bit. Let's see. How do you guys feel about the reports of the German Secret Service spying on Hillary Clinton? I really don't give a shit. We spied on Germany, so I guess it seems fair. Like I really don't give two fucks about Hillary Clinton. I just don't.
Yeah.
I think she'd be a terrible president.
Lucy.
And guess what? The Democrats are going to probably nominate her ass anyway, so we're going to be fucked with we're going to be stuck with somebody who's to the right of John McCain on when it comes to, a foreign military, or she's more of a hawk than fucking McCain, so we're
Yeah. I'll reveal the little bit of truth stuff to the show too. I'm probably the most pro-war progressive out of anyone you'll probably see on this panel show. I'm very pro-interventionist, and with what comes with that is, I think a willingness to accept what I think is the inevitability of espionage. I'm not at all surprised that Germany would spy on Hillary Clinton. And I don't say that just because, well, America did it first. I say that because I expect every goddamn country to be spying on each other constantly. And it gets pretty easy when you have the internet, for starters. So it's not like it's a difficult job anymore. But for private spying, I still even expect that. And I think that's actually a good thing. For one thing, it kind of keeps everyone a little more honest when it comes to the negotiating table, because like, oh really? You don't got nothing planned, eh? What's this thing we found on your computer? At the same time, it means I think it also helps if everyone had that mindset. It would help our politicians and our leaders and our elected officials to be a little more honest and a little more careful with what they do, to basically almost wear their hearts on their sleeves, if they will. I think that would be a little helpful at times, and I wouldn't encourage it, but I think as an inevitability, I think espionage, international espionage, is something probably, of all the NSA spying things, for example, that was the one I gave the least shits about. It just like, okay, whatever. The spying on your own citizens, that's pushing it. But spying on foreign governments, oh god, there's nothing more old as far as nations and states and kingdoms go. It's the oldest
thing. We expect that whole thing. We kind of expect nations to spy on each other, whatever. But anyway, before Stephen, you jump in, I just want to let everybody know that don't worry, we're getting to your questions. We can see them. It still is easier if you tweet the questions in, but we are grabbing whatever we can, so it's all right. We'll get to your questions. We can all be a little bit long-winded, so just bear with us. Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah, it's no real surprise if Germans have been spying on Hillary Clinton, or if they've been spying on any kind of largely known politician here in America or in Japan or in the UK. It's to be expected in this day and age. In regards to what Nick said, I do kind of agree a bit in that if people, because there are certain secrets that nations have to keep, and there are certain things that kind of they're supposed to be secrets, but you can't really hide them when it comes to negotiations. So it is quite good to keep everyone on their toes, sort of thing. And they're thinking, if they're thinking when it comes to the negotiation table, oh shit, they might already know that. Like, I can't pretend that I'm bluffing in this regard. Then overall, I guess it's for the best. It's just a shame that we have to live in that sort of world where we are having to spy on all of our allies. But that's the world we live in, so it's going to happen. I don't see how one is going to get past that until we just have a complete singular world government, and we're a couple of 100 or so years off of that happening.
Well, yeah, and keep in mind, that's the world we've pretty much always lived in. Spying has always been a thing. So, And it's always been a thing internationally. It's always been a thing whenever there's been entities, different political entities throughout regions that are not under an official umbrella organization. So it's really par for the course as far as nation states is concerned. So I mean, do we wish for a world where that didn't happen, where every nation wasn't keeping secrets from each other and there wasn't need for spies? I'd get behind that, but I think the day that comes is the day that we stop having militaries, and that I think it almost might even defy nature. So.
All right. Another question from Eva Roberts. She asked, how the hell can we get Congress to pass one law to help infrastructure? Now, she would say, I would get out and vote. But it seems that the bad Congress we have will elect the worst Congress. Am I getting that right? Because they have more of the money. Okay, so how can we get Congress to pass a law? That's an involved question. It takes a lot.
I thought it was a little more specific than that. Specifically, infrastructure. I thought.
Yeah.
I might be wrong though. Yeah.
Well, okay. So, Nick, if you want to answer it, like.
No, that's why I mentioned it, because I was thinking they could pass laws on some things, but the infrastructure one, it's like almost like a non-issue. They're not even talking about it. They haven't talked about it at all. The only time you ever hear anyone talking about how we need to do infrastructure reform is either when President Obama gives a State of the Union address and then doesn't do anything about it, or from not politicians. So it's not even on their radar. So that's why I defer to you on this one, because given it's your country, I hope you have some ideas.
Well, I think infrastructure can also be broadened out to pretty much anything that helps the American people. And the only way to get our current Congress to actually do something is to, and there are a lot of different ideas actually on how to do it. It depends on the time frame that you're looking for. In order to get them to do something immediately on infrastructure, it has to affect their own district. Because time and time again, there's some sort of project. And for example, Mitch McConnell will always make this thing when he goes to stump in Kentucky. I'll bring the money here to Kentucky. I'm going to bring the money home for infrastructure. So if there's any sort of project that someone needs in their own district, and look, even Paul Ryan loves that government money, loves it, right, for infrastructure, because he knows that in his district it's going to create jobs. Now, on the campaign trail, nationally, you say, infrastructure, no, we've got to cut money from that. We've got to cut government waste. We've got to cut government altogether. But on the down low, and there are documents where he asked for stimulus money in order to do infrastructure projects in his district. So I don't really think we have a whole large problem with infrastructure not getting done, even though overall I think we do have a problem with infrastructure not getting done. It just has to affect these politicians in their own districts before they actually get something done. Now, in order to kind of remedy this whole bullshit problem, I think is where you got to get money out of politics and actually have your representatives represent you and represent the needs of the entire country. And that's where you would actually get more national infrastructure projects to be approved, is if you actually hold them accountable and if they're actually accountable to your vote. And on the whole question of if you get rid of this current batch of bums, you're going to just get another set of bums that might even be worse. Now that's a good point, and that's where getting money out of politics and primarying from the left is so goddamn important. You've got to do something, or else you're going to keep getting the status quo.
I mean, I partly agree with that, and I think if you did get money out of politics, you would get more infrastructure sort of bills passed. I think to oversimplify it in a way is that you show politicians, to talk about kind of a national project, if you wanted to build an entire highway going from east coast to west coast, like an entire new highway, to expand it by another 3 lanes or whatever, then all you need to do is to get prominent kind of economists, kind of owners of construction kind of factories, things like that, cement producers, things like that, say, look, here are the numbers. This is going to create X amount of money over X number of years. It's going to help this state with this much money. It's going to help this state with this number of jobs. It's going to help this state, with whatever. Just do it by the numbers. Show the politicians. You show them that it's going to make money. You don't even say, oh, it's going to make people happy. It's going to do this. Just say, this is going to make money. You can even sell it that, oh, it's going to help decrease the debt. If you can sell it that way, sell it correctly, then I think
the problem here, Stephen, is that a lot of that, like some of the laws that we've enacted, right, are pushed solely on like partisan. For example, okay, reduces the debt, right? The deficits. Obamacare, great example, right? Saves people money, helps out, and it reduces the deficit because medical spending will be more in line, right, and won't continue to rise at such a horrible rate. Conservatives 100% against that because they say, oh, it's going to bankrupt the economy, blah, 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 all these bullshit reasons that have been disproven over and over and over again. And it actually makes more money for the health insurance industry and creates more jobs in the health insurance industry. And what do the Republicans do? 100% massively against it. And if they're massively against something that has all these positive steps, what makes you think that they're going to vote for something that also purports to, reduce the deficit, reduce the debt, all this stuff? Because they don't care. Republicans don't care about those things. They say they do in order to get the raw meat voters. They don't care. Conservatives are as big government as they come.
I really just think it's a matter of marketing. It's going to require a large part on the Democrats to get off their asses and do something, but it shouldn't be difficult to sell a project that will decrease deficit, will create jobs, and will help stimulate the economy in kind of 5 states or 8 states, wherever kind of this large national project is going to take place. It shouldn't be that difficult a job to sell that sort of thing. There will be people who say, oh, there's this problem with it, there's that problem with it. I mean, currently at the moment in the UK, there's a large debate going on about high-speed rail 2 or HS2, which is going to be a massive new trail track or train track that's going to go from London to, but it's basically going to link the south, London, the capital, all the way up to the north. And it's kind of going to cost billions of pounds, and people are umming and ahhing whether it's going to be kind of stimulate the economy. And yes, it's going to create jobs, and yes, it will help the economy, and it's going to help kind of efficiencies and stuff like that. It's only going to take an hour to go from Birmingham to London, whereas now it takes an hour and a half. And people are saying, oh, big wow, an extra half hour off the time. But if it is sold in the right way, and HS2 maybe isn't the right project, but if you actually have the right infrastructure project and the right marketing team behind it, I don't see it being a problem to sell. Like it should be very obvious, and if you just got to make it hard to argue against, and it's just a case of creating a good argument.
Well, here's the thing that Republicans are trying to sell with that message, and they're using all of their messaging tactics to try to sell this: tax cuts for the rich. Every one of those things that you list off, oh, it'll reduce the deficit, oh, it'll create jobs, oh, it'll help everyone out so much. We need to cut taxes. We need to, reduce the size of government, because that is the panacea for everything. And they're using all of their marketing focus to push that idea, which clearly doesn't work. They have their focus on one focus. I should say they have their sights on one focus and one focus only: tax cuts for the rich. Well, and I guess you can also add in deregulation, corporations. That's it. That's their plan. That's all they do.
Wah, wah.
Yeah. So, they could actually market something that does good, but then again, if it's a government program, they're not going to go for that, because their whole shtick is we have to reduce the size of government, even though that Republicans grow government more than anyone.
All I'm saying is, you look at and it's maybe not the best analogy or the best case, but it's the first one that springs to mind. You look at the NASA project, the Apollo missions to land man on the moon. Here's a mission. I know it's not technically infrastructure. We are going to do this project. It's going to be great for the nation. It's going to be something to be proud as an American. And okay, building a highway doesn't have the same sort of caliber as landing a man on the moon, but that cost a fair amount of money. It didn't have immediate effects for the benefit of the economy. It wasn't kind of clearly seen until kind of decades gone. But the entire American population, yes, there's still naysayers who are against it and thought it was pointless and stuff, but the majority of people were in favour of that and say, yes, let's be kind of proud Americans, this is a great thing to do. And so it'll be harder to sell a highway. I know we're just sticking with that specific example. It's harder to sell a highway than it is to sell landing a man on the moon, that's for sure. But it should still be doable, even with all these extra problems. I know it would be a harder slog, but you pass gay marriage and stuff, legalized weed, you can build another road, sort of thing. It shouldn't be the hardest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you can build another, a tower for the internet, or more infrastructure for a faster, high-speed internet. You can do that, and that's ultimately going to be better for jobs as well. It's going to give people, obviously, jobs to build it, and it's going to help with our net infrastructure, which, this country is going further and further and further towards automating and basically connecting everything and everyone to the internet. So, I guess if you could sell that argument well enough, you could get a lot of people on board. I'm just not sure how easy it would be to get the country bumpkins on board who are out in the middle of rural Nebraska that don't need the internet or don't.
First things first, they actually need to have internet, because some of them don't. So
yeah, and that's the main problem too, is that most of them don't have the internet, or a lot of them don't, and so they're like, internet, fuck that. We don't need to be wasting money on that infrastructure. I want my lower taxes. It's one of those things where we definitely should work to, and I would be a huge supporter of trying to hook everyone up, all the homes in America, up to the internet. I think that'd be a worthy pursuit, and definitely a good use of our tax dollars. That's just my opinion. All right. Anybody have any more questions? If not, we'll do some plugs and wish you guys an excellent weekend.
There was one question from a while ago that's very to do. Are any of you ballroom dancers? My answer to that is no.
Hold on. No. I was going to make some joke about by ballroom dancers you mean strip club dancers, and then make some hilarious joke that wasn't true, but no, I don't feel like it. No.
Only on the weekends.
Yeah, only on weekends when I'm feeling frisky.
Yeah, only on the weekends. I've had enough beer. No. I'm kidding. Of course. No.
There was one other one, but I can answer it in a sentence. It's do you think it's acceptable for First Nations to enact racist, xenophobic measures? No, I don't think it's acceptable, but it is definitely acceptable that their tribes deserve recognition as sovereign entities within nations. So that's it.
Oh, hold on. I'm told that I have a question on Twitter that I'm trying to find right now.
Oh.
It's from Irish, but I don't see it. Trying to find Irish. I don't have your question. At least I don't see it.
There's one question by Lucy there, just in the chat, that ISIS White House photo, is it real? I don't even know what photo she's referring to.
Yeah, I'm not sure
there's no way in holy hell that would be real.
Yeah, odds are it's going to be fake.
So ISIS, doubtful.
Yeah. if you're going to give ISIS any credit at all, it's that they've got a very good social media campaign. Like they've been, as terrorist organizations go, they've done a good job in that regard. But yes, so they're going to have a skilled photoshopper who could probably mock up anything. So in regards to the photo that I haven't even seen, yeah, it's probably fake.
Yeah, just terrorists with Photoshop. No worries. All right, so Irish, if you have that question, if you can repost that, then we'll do that final question, and then I've got to get out of here. I've got to get some food. How do you feel about Canada being referred to as a theme park?
Irish, considering you're the only one I can think of who's actually called it a theme park, I don't know. I'm kind of indifferent, kind of flattered that you find my country so magical and wonderful that you're willing to equate it as a theme park. So, thank you. All right, I think we're done with that.
And Lucy was referring to. She said there was a photo taken of the White House with someone holding up their phone for the ISIS flag.
No, I don't believe it. Do not believe it, Lucy. That's nonsense. We just dropped a bomb. We just dropped bombs on ISIS. You honestly, does someone think ISIS is going to be flying a flag in the White House? No, that's not possible.
All right, guys. I gotta shut this whole thing down. Save your questions for next week. We'll do more questions. Thank you guys for sending them in, of course. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys watching here on TYT Community, the Social Justice Hour. Tune in, of course, next week, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, for another episode of TYT Community News and Politics Hour, discussing some of the fun and excellent news stories of the day, also depressing. I should say news stories of the week, since we're not really like a daily format. Anyway, if you could help us out by giving us a like here on YouTube, helps us out a lot. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Visit our various social media pages, facebook.com/TYT Nation or TYT Community. There are 2 pages up there. I manage them both. And then follow me on Twitter at Jeff's Politics. And if you love the show and want to continue to support us, like some of you are, donate to our Patreon page, patreon.com/TYT Nation. Big shout out to Julie Frazier, who is our biggest patron right now. Thank you so much for supporting the show. The show cannot run without you. Really appreciate it. So, anyway, like I said, send me your questions. You can tweet questions for next week. I'll try and take them down. Twitter makes it really easy to take questions in advance. So if you have anything that you think of during the week, make sure to send them to me. Other than that, I think I've got all the plugs out of the way. Thank you, Stephen.
Time for my plug. Time for my new plug. Sorry, I got to put in my new plug still. So yeah, Jeff mentioned subscribe, please. Even those of you who found the show via the network, because I know there are some of you out there who just go to the main show and then through the network to find this channel, and you just watch it that way. Please subscribe. It does help the show a lot. Everyone who watches should subscribe. Please. It helps the show a lot. Okay.
It really does. It really does. So with that said, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, audience. You guys are fantastic. I'll probably talk to you guys before next week's show, in between, in the week, in the TYT Talk chat. So, and you can always bounce some questions off me, and if you want in there too. So, other than that, you guys have a fantastic weekend. Take care of yourselves. Have a great weekend, like I said, and we'll see you back here next week on TYT Community. And damn it, I do need to.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.